well, why are they not growing the company? If you hire someone, look for someone who is a leader.
I'm a guy who's like more in marketing. I built a personal brand on YouTube like for 3-4 years about recovery and addiction. I tried like a couple guys to run the business. It didn't really work. So thank God I didn't have like an agreement for long term with them. So how do you know, like, how do you pick the right CEO? Like, how do you think you need a GM instead of CEO? Or like, do you want to give away some shares for him on the long term? So he would be like, I mean, in general, how to find and pick a really good guy to run the business while I can like expand the marketing, do the media, and like bring all the sales in.
Why didn't they work out?
So actually, some of them I discovered that they don't have the much skills. At the beginning, they were nice and everything were good, but I mean, we had a different vision at the end. The other guy was more like treating the employees in a not really in a nice way, which is like opposite of our culture because we're in a mental health treatment business, so we need to do that. So it's kind of really hard. Like you can easily find a marketing guy or marketing director, but it's not easy to find a guy who runs all that and like has all these stuff all together.
You know, it's funny, is like an operator would hear what you just said and be like, not hard to find a marketing person? What the fuck?
I mean, it's difficult, but I mean, not like a CEO. It's like you find your partner, you find a wife, or it's not easy, you know?
The first thing I'll say is that oftentimes finding somebody like this is best done through your network if possible. Because the more relation you have when you're finding someone like that, I think the better. But if you can't find someone through your network and you're going out to look, then it absolutely would do outbound. Like I would be on LinkedIn looking for the exact type of person that I need, thinking like, what are companies like mine or companies that have components of my company in terms of their infrastructure? It doesn't need to be the external infrastructure, but like their team, that if I were to go and approach this person, they might have interest coming to my company, right? Or they would know people who would. And so that's the first place I would start for you. How to attract that person? I think that most CEOs, like professional CEOs who are in like private equity, for example, are used to anywhere, if they're inexperienced, they might take 1%. If they're really experienced, they might take 4% in terms of like an equity-like structure in the company. I think a lot of people that are smaller businesses tend to throw up higher numbers, but I've seen like in companies that are doing 50, 60 million, 100 million, 150 million, like I haven't seen somebody with more than 4%, and that's pretty standard across the board. Compensation-wise, you know, it depends on your company size. I would say it probably ranges anywhere from 200 to 450 based on size. And so I would go on something like PayScale or salary.com and I would just like comp it, meaning like you can run a comp for like your size company, the role you're looking for, to just double check what does it say there. And then I would go back on LinkedIn and I would look at those companies and I would see if I could find on LinkedIn or Glassdoor what kind of pay that they're getting for them. So because there's basically like, there's what the PayScale and salary.com and all that bullshit says. And then there's like word on the street, which is like, okay, but what is like actually getting paid to these people? Because I think pay is a little bit of an art and a science. And then I think like the reality is that they're not gonna come knocking on your door. You've got to go find them and you have to go find them, because the difficulty is to attract somebody like this. Like if I were to go and try and say like, I want to go find a CEO right now, like my team is fantastic, but there's a difference with Layla reaching out or Alex reaching out than like somebody on my team reaching out. And so if I'm trying to get one of the best CEOs to join my team, then I'm going to come in like guns blazing and I'm going to message everyone. I'm going to do the outbound myself. Because like, think about it. This person is the unlock for your business. If it's the biggest constraint that you have, then you want to throw everything at it. And it means like you're the chief problem solver right now, so you go in and solve the problem. So I have found the best way to be using my network. So like, for example, like I had a role that I opened up a few days ago and I was like, I need a fucking killer. So I literally go through my phone, I go through my Instagram, I go through everything. And I just think like, who do I know that would know somebody like this? And then I put it out there, word for everybody. And then I get referrals. And then the next thing I would do is I would say, okay, now I'm going to go outbound, which is like, I'm going to go on LinkedIn and I'm going to find people who work at companies that would have a role like this that I would want. I would start messaging those people, you know? And a lot of times what I do is I use my track record. I'm like, here's my name, here's the company that I own, here's what I've done in the past, here's what I'm looking to do, and here's what I'm looking for. Because I want them to know like I'm a credible person that's reaching out to them, and this isn't just like some random, you know, message. But it's gonna take work. And then in terms of what you do for that person, like the same framework that Frank shared yesterday, like that's the framework that I use for hiring. And I think the most important thing is like if you're hiring a CEO, if you're hiring an executive, someone you're gonna pay a ton of money, then I think it's really important that the last area in terms of making sure it's a fit, that's what I hone in on in the interview. This is like, are they a fit in all of these areas? And if this person were to be fired in 60 days, what would the reason be? And then I try and work backwards from that in terms of like, what are all the things I need to do to de-risk this situation? For example, like if you're going to bring in somebody who's at a higher level in your company, like don't give them 4% equity on day one. Have a cliff of a year. And so it's like, I would never bring in an executive and say like, you get 4% on day one. I'd say like, cool, we have a 1 year cliff. And so that means that if you're here in 12 months, 1% vests, year 2, 2%, you'll get 2%, then 3, then 4, etc. I would say like a waterfall structure like that. And then I would probably give them some sort of cash incentive, because like there's equity, then there's their cash incentive, which is salary, which I mentioned, the 200 to 450. Plus, I would probably say some kind of incentive based on revenue growth and profit. So like how much has revenue grown that year and what's profit that year? Because you don't want them to focus on either one, you want them focused on both. And I hope that answered your question. Sorry, there's so much. I'm like, all right, let's make a course.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So we've got department heads. Our top line revenue is around 20 million. I'm thinking I want to hire like an operations manager, or like just someone to like be the point of like the head.
Yeah.
And me step back and work on like just growing the business. And am I on the right track? And if so, any advice on hiring that? Because I feel kind of scared because it's kind of like letting go of the wheel. In a sense, I don't know if I'm on the right track here or not.
Yeah. I mean, I'll ask you these couple of questions, which is one, what are the top 3 things this person's going to do weekly, daily basis?
Managing all the department heads, holding them accountable to their scorecards, and then just putting out small fires, random shit that comes up.
Okay, so it's mostly somebody who's a leader.
Correct.
Okay. How much of that person do you need to help you in facilitating growth in the company? Do you see them as somebody that you would like to grow into that, or do you just want somebody to handle the day-to-day?
I want someone to handle the day-to-day so I can focus on growth.
Okay. I think absolutely you're at the size where you could hire that. People hire it at half your revenue. I think it comes down to preference and where you want to spend your time. You know what I mean? Like, I like actually managing the core team. That's actually something I really enjoy doing. And it sounds crazy, but I like it. And so I just spread myself super thin. I think there's no right or wrong is what I'm saying. Is like, if you would prefer not to do that and to just focus on this one thing because you operate best that way, then let's do that. Because I think that there's different ways that you can play the role of CEO or founder. Some people don't manage anybody except for one person, right? And some people manage every person. It's just like, how do you know that you're going to work best? And if all this noise over here is just too much that you can't get the other stuff done, then get somebody. And the only thing I'll say is this: if you hire someone, look for someone who is a leader, who has influence. And at this point, if it's not something that you feel like you can teach that person, then it means you hire for somebody who already has that. But where a lot of people make the mistake is they hire someone to manage the day-to-day. And then what I see a lot of times is then it transfers over. They're like, well, why are they not growing the company? I'm like, well, what did you hire them for? And so I think that is a very important delineation to understand, is like, when I'm hiring for an operator, I really think about, like, do I need somebody that can just manage, or like manage and grow? What do I need now? What am I going to need in a year? So I would just think that through to understand, because it's definitely a different avatar.
Got it. Thank you.
When hiring for a position such as a general manager for brick and mortar locations, which, they do a lot of stuff, what are the 3 main traits you look for when hiring for that position?
So it's an operations manager for a physical location.
Yeah. Because they do a lot of stuff, so it's like, what's the most important thing you look for?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a couple. Do you want technical skills or character traits?
Well, character traits for me are always more important in my experience, but technical also helps.
I would say somebody who's hardworking, enthusiastic, and detail-oriented.
Okay.
And then how that translates into technical skills is I want somebody who is sales-driven, has sales aptitude, because when you're running a single location, like, if you're not able to make sales and generate revenue, that's a little tough. And so I wouldn't want someone who just knows like back office, back operations stuff. That's actually not, when we're looking to hire, like in our portfolio companies that have locations, I'm looking for sales-oriented people who we can teach a lot of this customer success and operational side too. That doesn't mean that eventually one day you're going to have one mega operator over all of them, which that would happen eventually if you expand locations. But for just like a single location, that's what I'd be looking for out of somebody. And I think you want somebody that wants to put all of that, that's hungry. They want to put all of their discretionary effort into this location, because what you'll see is that to make single location metrics work, you can't have some giant team. And so a lot of people hire the wrong, I would say, like avatar. They hire people that just want to clock in and clock out to run their locations. It doesn't really work in a small business single location. At least like the profitability difference is insane. Like we have one chain and their locations where we have what we call like the owner operator mindset people, where we hired them with the intention of like, this is like your location, you're running it, it's your business. Those locations are twice as profitable as the ones that have hired just like clock in and clock out. And that's just discretionary effort. It's not like they're not doing the job, they're just not putting in that extra effort, you know?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
But like a lot of skills, I think, for running a single location of certain things like can be taught. It's not something that you need to be able to hire that exact person who's done it before.
Yeah, just for the record, my experience is always easy to teach these skills to someone with aptitude and a good heart than trying to hire, technical people that are just horrible people.
Yeah, just not a match. That's great then. You're on the right track.
All right, thank you.
For sure.
We have about 15 guys right now. We do a lot of polishing, like skilled labor. I'm trying to grow it to like 30 to 40 guys. And I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to fast track the training, because we prefer to bring them on without really knowing anything, because they don't have bad habits.
Yeah.
And then train them ourselves. So what's the best way to fast track the training and then maintain high quality?
Think about it like this, right? So for a customer, you guys have heard, like time to value is very important, right? So like how quickly can you get this person the value of the product that they just got? I look at it in the same with an employee, which is like how quickly can I get them producing value in the company? The fastest way is to put a lot more effort into the onboarding. And so for me, for example, like structuring out for a role that is duplicative, like the one that you're describing, where you have a lot of people doing the same thing. We have that in a couple portfolio companies. And so what they do is they batch onboard people. So basically what they'll do is they will, every month or however long, they will, if you're already in person, I assume, for this business, they will have them all do basically like a whole week-long training. And so before they do anything, they go through this 7-day training. And then thereafter, they have once a week continued training as well as self-assignments. I really think the upfront investment of those 7 days makes all the world of a difference, because you're immersing that person into everything. They're building relationships. They're building a relationship with you, with their peers, with the company. The amount of like contextual knowledge that they get from those 7 days just like far surpasses. Think about how long you would have to like do to replicate that. It's like, okay, I need 7 days. Let's say they're there spending time with people for 12 or 13 hours a day. It's like how many months of once a week meetings would that take?
Yeah.
And so when I think of onboarding, I think of not onboarding, but acceleration for an employee. So it's like, I actually feel like onboarding is such a lame term. It's like, it's really acceleration. How do you get them up to speed as fast as possible? And so what you need to think about, in my opinion, is what are the core things that in those 7 days they need to learn, like to be fundamentally successful. And so I would probably look at, if you have a hard time thinking that through, who were my most successful people off the bat? And there's 2 things you want to think about. 1, what skills did they already have when they came in? Because you say they had nothing, they had some. Maybe it means that they could show up on time. Maybe it means that they could do math. Maybe it means that they knew how to say no to customers. Think about those things, right? So think about those best people. What were the skills they already had? And then the next piece is, what were the skills that you successfully taught those people? Because what this is doing is it's figuring out what skill level are you able to successfully teach? Because we all have one. I know, for me, what level of skill I can teach and what one is truly not worth my time based on the business I have. Or maybe is beyond my level of competence to teach. And then I would use that to put together that 7-day accelerator.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.